On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers eked out a win. Yes, eked out a win over the Phoenix Suns. We'll discuss that win and Evan Mobley's development and a bunch more on this episode of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
All right, the music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astro Radio. Check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. I'm Chris Manning, covering the Cavs for places like Fear the Sword and Diamond UPROXX. That man over there is Evan Dammarell. He is most commonly known as the proprietor of Right Down Euclid. You can catch him at Fear the Sword as well. Just a production note, Jake Stevens is off today, so I had to produce this one. So if it sounds bad, sounds worse than normal, that's on me.
Faith in your abilities, don't worry.
Evan's told me this twice now, and guess what? It's not going to inspire much confidence for me and myself. But, Evan, let's talk about Cavs Suns.
Let's put it this way. I could be editing this show right now.
I mean, I'm not good at this, so we'll figure it out. But anyway, the Cavs win 90-88. They eke out a win over the Phoenix Suns. Evan, this game was a slog. This game was ugly. This game was often not fun to watch. But for the Cleveland Cavaliers, a professional basketball team, you'll take the win however you can get it, and you feel good ultimately, I think, about the end, about kind of your play towards the end of this game.
Yeah, I agree. When we were walking out of Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse tonight after media availability wrapped up, I said to you, I really cannot believe the Cavs won this game, because for those who maybe didn't watch this game and are just using us as a reliable way to kind of just figure out what happened, Cleveland only scored 33 points in the first half, and granted, they won this game somehow, some way, but like just heading to halftime, it didn't inspire much hope or confidence. Like Donovan Mitchell's shots weren't really falling, and even though he had 11 points, like he was 3 of 11 from the field, Karis LeVert was really the only factor offensively, and he had 9 points. He was in fact the one of 2 Cavaliers who hit a three-pointer, and Cleveland started 0 of 14 from three-point range. I asked Jared Allen about this prior to the game at shoot-around, like, is there going to be a bit of an emotional hangover just because Monday's game was such like a Disney movie like ending, and like the Cavs can like ride off into the sunset and like everyone retires and just lives a happy life afterwards. But no, the Cavs had to play on Wednesday, and you could definitely tell like there was something off from just the opening tip. Like the Cavs just kind of came out super flat, and Allen said that more often than not, when the Cavs do have big wins like they did on Monday, they do come out flat, and that they're trying to find a way to kind of avoid getting in these holes like this. So I don't know. Like, it was surprising. Cleveland was only down 10 at halftime, but the fact that they were able to contain the Suns so well, outscored them 57-45 in the second half overall, and you kind of got a lot of contributions across the board. But like the biggest surprise was Halu Neto, of all people. He was kind of the saving grace for the Cavs in this one. He provided a bit of a spark just with his defensive play, and then JB Bickerstaff noted in the second half, so they made a bit of an adjustment where they pressured Phoenix a lot on the defensive side of the ball, and they just relied on fast break opportunities to kind of get easier buckets, and it opened things up for Cleveland a little bit, and I think just increased a little bit of confidence as well. And you just watch the shots start to go in, and then, yeah, I'm shocked still that they won this game. Like, it was a bad game of basketball through the first half.
Yeah, we'll get into, I think, the Neto and LeVert of it all in segment 2 when we give out some game awards, but I think to discuss just the some of the numbers of this game and how like weird it was that they won. As Evan mentioned, 33 points in the first half. That is just like anemic offense. Like that is the Suns scored 29 alone in the second quarter, right? Like this wasn't like it was like both teams necessarily were great, but like the Suns were better. The Suns shot 43% from the field in the first half, 50% on twos. The Cavs were 29% in the first half, and 42% on twos, and like bad on, and 16% on threes. They missed their first. They missed their first like 14 threes. Donovan Mitchell coming off of that 71-point performance was 3 of 11 and 1 of 7 from 3 in the first half. Right, like Jared Allen had one shot and had 0 points in the first half. Like you had Karis LeVert was 3-7, and that was like kind of your best, most prolific offensive force in the first half. He had 9 points. Like this was just a bad half, and it's like it's hard to win a basketball game against anyone when you score 33 points and a half. And look, the Suns are in a bad place right now. The Cavs were favorites coming into this game. The Suns don't have Devin Booker. Like there's reasons to think the Cavs could have just won this game, and like obviously they did, but like this was ugly. The other thing, Evan, that I was thinking about when I was driving home was like this is now 3 games in a row that in different ways the Cavs have just kind of mucked up and won. And like last year, think about where the season goes off the rails. Like they had a lot of weird games late. They kind of ultimately lose. Things just don't go right, and like it's part of the reason they end up playing. It's part of the reason why things just kind of fall apart. They've now like in beating the Bulls twice in kind of different ways without some of your best players, and then a game like this where you beat Phoenix after a really bad first half. Like these are wins that like in tight seeding battles and things like you'll look back at them and maybe we don't think of them as how we best understand the Cavs in a lot of ways, but we can I think look at them and say like they will be necessary in if the Cavs are going to maximize whatever this is and kind of have the best seed possible. Like these are the kind of wins you kind of just need to luck into sometimes or kind of grit your way into sometimes.
It is interesting to think about it in that aspect. JB Bickerstaff shared with me prior to Monday's game against Chicago, like it's easy to get caught up in that after the fact, like especially towards the end of the season, like, oh, if we had a few more wins, we as in the Cavs, we would be in a better seeding spot. But you're absolutely right. Like these are the wins that kind of have an impact, which is how tight the East is in general this season. And I think the fact that like Karis LeVert made a very poignant point on this, like he said in the playoffs, games are going to be like this a lot, where it's going to be a lot of ugly games at times, and there's going to be opportunities where it's more half-court offensive sets, and you're not going to be able to kind of get the shots you want. Maybe there's going to be certain pressure points and scenarios that hit you in certain ways, so that like maybe this is also just a valuable learning experience for some of these Cavaliers. You wish if you're Cleveland you had Darius Garland out there to learn from this stuff as well, and it's unfortunate that Garland is currently sidelined with that thumb injury of his, but in the grand scheme of things, this is a good confidence booster if you're Cleveland. You're now riding a 3-game winning streak before you head on a lengthy West Coast-ish, more so mountain range road trip, but this is a kind of a good place to be, and more funnily enough, you'll be seeing this Phoenix team pretty soon. It'll be like a weird pseudo playoff series between these two squads, as well as Cleveland heads to Phoenix on Sunday coming up, and we'll talk about that more for Friday's show. But yeah, it's kind of like a collection of all their parts just kind of hitting, and I think also just trying to find ways to win, maybe without being overly reliant on Donovan Mitchell. I think the first Chicago win in this game was kind of good indicators of like, okay, the Cavs kind of had to find something from somewhere else, along with Mitchell sometimes getting his shots as well, and also just kind of compensating for the lack of Darius Garland out there too. And I think that that's really standing out for me in these games as well, as like the lack of Garland is very evident in these, at least these last 2 wins for sure.
Evan, one last thing that I thought watching this game. This felt like a game where the Cavs probably could have used some of Ricky Rubio just to kind of help make the offense work. This isn't that Howell Neto didn't play well, and we'll talk about him, but I felt like some of the Rubio stuff, or obviously Darius Garland as well, but like if you can't have Garland and you do have Rubio, I wonder if there's just some of like this is one of those games where like I felt like you missed Rubio just because he would have helped figure some stuff out.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, especially like with Kevin Love going back to the bench, and I keep kind of hammering this point home here, but Kevin Love had that 6 Man of the Year candidate type season last year because a lot of it was Ricky Rubio just building a lot of momentum with him for the better part of the first half of the season for Cleveland. And I think just having Rubio back to be that calming presence, and maybe you don't get exactly the same play from Rubio like you did last season, but you're going to get something. And I think it's just more so the cerebral playmaking and the kind of the savant style plays that he can make passing the basketball. And I think it just makes offense just a little bit more functional, a little bit easier. And like you said, if let's say Garland is out or Garland just isn't playing that night, or even if you don't have one of Mitchell or Garland on the floor, like it's just helpful to have a very, very steady and reliable ball handler like Rubio. And again, no disrespect to Neto, but he doesn't get consistent minutes in this rotation enough for him to really be in this conversation at the end of the day.
All right, we're going to go into our ad break. We're going to go into our game awards after said ad break. In segment 3, we're going to talk about Evan Mobley's development, which we'll hit on a little bit, I think, in segment 2 as well, based on an award Evan is going to give out. But first, got to tell you about our friends at Built Bar. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat healthier, a little healthier this year in 2023. If you're like me where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then I've got just the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and they come in unbelievably awesome flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Look, I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around and get a box. For years, we've been telling you about ordering your Built bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built bars. You can pick up 4 boxes of cookies and cream, double chocolate or coconut puffs. And if you're closer to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with 2 different flavors, brownie batter and churro. Thank me later. Go check out them today and look at if you need to shop online. Built.com works too. Oh, yeah. We're back. Locked on Cavs. Chris Mann, Evan Dammarell. Let's go into game awards. So, Evan, let's start with MVP. Who's your game MVP?
It's Halu Neto, which I don't think we're going to be able to give him many shout-outs throughout the greater scope of this season for the Cavs. Maybe like game 82, Cleveland rests every meaningful starter, and Neto just happens to start that game. But other than that, like this is just a game where Cleveland, again, was not playing well in the first half, and Neto really came out in the first half. And I noticed he was hounding Cameron Payne a lot. And then he started doing more of the same in the second half to Chris Paul. And I think just, again, Cleveland is a defensive first team, and they predicate a lot of how their offense flows in fast break, especially because of that defense. And Neto is kind of the linchpin of it. A lot of it goes with your MVP pick, too, who also played very good defense in the second half, especially towards the end of the third quarter. But yeah, this was just a good game for Halu Neto overall. He made a lot of meaningful impacts. He had that sneaky good steal off the inbounds play where he got another layup for Cleveland. And let's be frank, JB Bickerstaff kind of alluded to it. Like the Cavs may not have won this game if Halu Neto didn't give them the spark they gave them, and he just kind of was playing intelligently out there. Like he wasn't trying to play without or not within the means of his role and everything else. And he just played well. So yeah, he doesn't get a lot of those opportunities. So I'm going to give him a shout out on this one. He was the MVP for me.
Yeah, he was great. This is why you just sign like competent players at the end of your roster.
Yeah. Sorry, Kevin Pangos.
Yeah, tough look. All right. I wonder, did he get that? I'm gonna see if I don't know. I didn't see who got it, but he feels like he might have been like the.
Neto got the junkyard dog too.
Okay, I just need to see a photo with him with the chain, just because I think that chain sometimes is silly, but I also just like think it's like when guys wear it, I just think sometimes like it's like, oh, this photo's great. That's like this is my only this.
Something in Portuguese, so I'll upload it for you though.
No, I see it. This is good stuff. Okay, my MVP is Karis LeVert. Neto's a great pick as well, but I thought LeVert, this is one of the better games LeVert has had of late. Really kind of needed scoring. He had a really hot night from 3, 5-7 from 3. Aside from him, the Cavs were 6 of 29 from 3. As a team, they only shot 30% from 3, but LeVert was 5 of 7. They just like needed him. Played some active hands on defense. Was like trying to play in the way you'd want him to. Played 37 minutes. That's a team high. So shouts to Karis LeVert for the game he played. That's the kind of performance that like what you need to see from him to kind of believe that he can continue to contribute. Evan, we have the same stat of the night.
Yeah.
33 points in the first half.
It boggles the mind. Again, I was not shocked because I think this Cavs team has shown ways to win ugly, but it is very surprising to see them kind of climb back from only scoring 33 points in the first half and somehow finding a way to win this game. Like I jokingly tweeted this, and I've said this to you a couple times. Like, if you're Phoenix, you're kicking yourself right now. You held Cleveland to 33 points in the first half after Donovan Mitchell has a historic night on Monday night, and like you're defending him pretty well, and like just kind of making him work to get every single point out there, and you still lose this game. Like that has to be so defeating if you're the Suns at the end of the day.
Like Chris Paul, the Suns in this game, Chris Paul plays 40 minutes. Chris Paul is like not a young man anymore. You know, you had Landry Shamet hitting some like dagger threes. Like, Ayton played pretty well. Like, you didn't get Mikal Bridges only 3 of 15. So, like, didn't get a good shooting night from him. You got, like, 2 Darius Hartrees. Like, you got, like, a lot of little things. And where you're like, Chris Paul had, like, 2 quarter buzzer beating threes where you're just like, oh, like, those are sometimes, I feel like sometimes when those things happen is, like, sort of, like, not analytical, but like try to like based in reality as I try to be sometimes and like pragmatic about some of this stuff. It's like I see those 2 Chris Paul threes going in, and he's 3. Those are like 2 of his three makes of the night. I'm just like, oh, if he's gonna make these twice, like this maybe is just not the Cavs' night. Like it feels like it's going in that direction, and then it's just like Chris Paul, who has had like a weird year, had 25 points, was 9 of 17 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3, 8 assists, just 1 turnover, had 2 steals. Like really good Chris Paul game, and like you didn't win it, and like I know you don't have Booker, and like they're struggling, and they're 20 and 19 now, and all that stuff, but like that's just brutal. Like I we don't go to the opposing team's media availability, but like that's one of those ones where I would have just like liked to see like on a human level just kind of interact. Like that would have been interesting to me to see just in what they have to say and just kind of what the vibe is coming out of that. Because like again, you give up 33 points in the first half, you're up by 11. You got this really good Chris Paul game, like, and you lose, and like that sucks for a team that's just trying to tread water right now. Okay, let's go to play of the night, Evan. Mine, we don't need to talk about mine. I just thought 6:09 fourth quarter, nice. Okoro had a step through on a drive from the corner. He's just gotten more functional on offense. I understand the calls to maybe go to Jetty Osman as a starter at the 3. Maybe we could talk about that on Friday again as we get closer to. We just talked about it, but maybe we'll talk about it again because it's kind of like a never-ending story topic for us here. But that's a play I really like from Okoro. I just wanted to shout that out. But the real play of the night is Evan Mobley's game winner.
We can talk about this play real quick.
No, there's no need to talk about this play.
It was a good play.
A lot,
to be frank.
I just have a lot more to say about this Mobley play, so let's just talk about that.
Yeah, like Evan Mobley in general didn't have a great night after missing a few games due to injury, and he was very impactful defensively. I'd say like he was very good at walling off Phoenix at times and just kind of walling them off in general, and also made like a lot of meaningful hustle plays and strip steals and things like that. But like offensively, his shot really wasn't going for him. Karis LeVert noted, and it is definitely noticeable. Like the Suns made a concerted effort to pack the paint against Cleveland and kind of dared them to beat them with shooting, but lo and behold, Evan Mobley may not have shot the ball well tonight, but the one shot he did make was the one that mattered most, and it won the game. And I think it's just kind of refreshing and interesting to see Mobley swish a game winner like that instead of it being like a dunk or a layup or something like that. Like, no disrespect to that, but like Mobley just kind of having the confidence in his jumper and looks so fluid and not so like stiff or mechanical out there. It's encouraging to see, and I think you're slowly seeing the evolution of his game kind of keep growing and growing a little bit.
This play was really interesting just because I when I went back and watched it, when I wrote about it for my takeaways at Fear the Sword, like I in real time, like you just sometimes you miss stuff, and at the angle we're sitting at, like you miss things, and you like I love the layering of him in the corner where he comes around, and like it's almost like they put him behind Jared Allen. And Jared Allen like is like kind of blocking for him, right? And then like clearly the initial thing is like let's like let Donovan Mitchell make a play. Let's figure this out. And then what happens is Mitchell penetrates, gets into the lane, and Mobley whips around and feeds back in, and he's got all the room in the world. Like all he has to do is gather himself, and he hits a clean pull-up jumper, and it's like that was simple, and it's like it made me want to see more of that as a set for Mobley. I understand like you have some like there's some you'd have to get creative in placement, and like the Cavs love to just kind of run to their wings to the corners, and maybe it's hard to do that sometimes, but like that's like an action for Mobley that I really like to get him more dynamic looks with the ball. I understand they do some of it. Tonight was a little like trying to force him into post touches, like he had the offensive foul against Shamet, like they tried to post him against Mikal Bridges once. Do more of this stuff and less of the other stuff. But this was like this is his first game winner, and that's a big deal. And we're gonna talk more about him in segment 3. But I love the design, and him is I think again Mitchell is the lead option there, but like the backup option being Mobley filling in like that was really really good design. And the Suns just like left him wide alone. They forgot he was there.
Yeah, they did. JP Bickerstaff did admit like it wasn't exactly how they drew it up, but like Mobley was like the second read or even the third option in that play in general. But like the play broke down a little bit just because the Suns were defending it well, continued to back the paint. Like you said, Mobley was kind of just left wide open there and like had a very clean look and a very open opportunity to make that shot. And more than anything, like sometimes when you see Mobley getting looks like that, he would rather make the extra pass to a guy in the corner or kick it back out to the guy at the top of the perimeter as well. But like he instead just pulled up, shot it with conviction and confidence, and switched it. And like that's the kind of shot you want to see from a guy who you're hoping can be like that elite two-way franchise guy for you, who still has a lot of room to grow clearly, but has oozes and mammoths of potential that you really want to enjoy. But before we head into the break, Chris, I do want to give one quick shout out for a pseudo play of the night. Shout out to friend of the program, Danny Cunningham, for having the muscle memory and the muscle reaction to almost download Top Gun to your phone within seconds. Like he just saw Tom Cruise on your phone and just tap and almost had it on there.
Look, this doesn't play as well for the people that weren't there, but that I felt it was a lot of aggression coming towards me in that moment, like a lot of need for speed from you and Danny there. It was both of you. It wasn't just Danny. This was both of you.
Well, I just laughed when I saw that because I'm just like,
but I felt like I was being like squeezed like by a pincer. Like that's what I felt like in that moment.
That's fair, but I did try to grab your other arm, but Chris has been working out. He's a lot stronger. He's been gobbling up them Built bars.
Just been crushing some cookie dough Built bars. My goodness,
that's a good way to go about it. But if
Chris...
they
real quick, the Built Bar flavor I want is the do you know about the Tom Cruise cake that he sends to everyone people on his Christmas list cake every year?
No.
I'm gonna send you the thing about this, but they need to make a Built Bar flavor about this, and I want to find that cake because it seems pretty great. No, it's apparently incredible. Everyone that talks about it like gushes about it. Anyway, we'll be right back after this break. But Evan, you got an ad read for us?
Well, if Chris decides to fire me as co-host of this show, because I tried to grab his arm so Danny could download Top Gun onto his phone, he may want to use today's other sponsor, LinkedIn. These days, every new potential client hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you even have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out today's sponsor, LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screen questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experiences so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find a qualified candidate you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, we're back here on the Locked On Cavs podcast. Chris Manning, Evan Dammarell. Evan, let's move on to discussing one Evan Mobley in some detail. So JB Bickerstaff was asked post game about Mobley's development. We weren't there for this, but I guess Monty Williams, the Suns head coach, said something about this pregame where he's like, "Look, it's hard to compare Mobley 1-to-1 to like some of the guys he's maybe compared against because like he doesn't get the Anthony Davis, Giannis, like well. he doesn't get like the offensive leeway to just like create and do everything on his own and like take on like this massive offensive role. The Cavs are accelerated, like they aren't in a position where like they're just going to turn over the keys to him. Like they have Donovan Mitchell, they have Darius Garland, like they have expectations to win basketball games, and basically it's like, look, we want to have him impact winning. He did go out of his way to kind of say, like, look, I've said this before, but like I believe, at his best and at our best, Evan Mobley could be the most impactful two-way player that we have. I think that's absolutely the upside for Mobley. I think this is just something. I think when I'm going to pull up his stats, Evan, but and just kind of we'll talk through them a little bit. I think this is like the thing to remember with Mobley is that like I think ultimately his development path might just look like a little bit different than other guys he's compared against. He's having, I think, a really good. I think he has improved in some ways. His numbers don't necessarily like indicate that in a lot of ways, but like he's still like the ceiling. Like my opinion on how good he can be has like that has not changed. He's still playing like an insane level in a lot of ways, and the development's just going to look a little bit differently. But what do you make of just the what did you make of the comment? This to me was maybe the most interesting thing that Bickerstaff said after the game.
I mean, for me, it's more so the fact that Jared Allen taking that three-pointer to open the game was 100% on Jared Allen. It wasn't by design. But It was an interesting subtext just in general because Evan Mobley is a unique player because last season I think a lot of the offensive explosion can be predicated on Darius Garland having just a monstrous third year overall, but like the defensive two-way potential Cleveland kind of had as a team just clicked when they had Evan Mobley and Jared Allen starting together, and there was a lot of expectations for Mobley heading into year two, and you intelligently noted just heading into the season, like, hey, getting Donovan Mitchell kind of mitigates some of that need for Mobley to step up as like that second or third option, pardon me, offensively. And just because Jared Allen just is, no disrespect to him, only going to give you so much offensively, and like Mobley just has a lot of potential in what he could be as an offensive threat. But JB's 100% right. Like there are certain players that are ahead of Mobley in the pecking order. Like the offense certainly flows around how Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland read and react to opposing defenses, and how Cleveland kind of does off-ball movements and things like that through Mobley and Allen, whether it's through screening or just like an off-ball stuff too. So it is interesting to think about. Like the Giannis comparison is just kind of overnight because I always like to remind people that for the longest time the Bucks planned on Jabari Parker being the central star for the Bucks, and Giannis is supposed to be like a high-end role player for them, or like a complimentary co-star that's like more of a role player. And then obviously Parker blows out his knees and Giannis just has like a freakish evolution, hence the Greek Freak moniker he lives up to pretty well. But Cleveland was just in a unique situation where they were bad the year they got the top 3 pick to get Mobley, but like when they get Mobley, it's a unique enough situation where like Mobley kind of has the ability to grow at his own pace instead of being forced into certain things, or maybe given like 20-30 shot opportunities a night as well. So it is interesting to think about. I do think about when you asked JB pregame once, to just like the unique balance of like finding ways that, if you're talking about Isaac Okoro though, of course, but it's like the unique balance of finding ways to prioritize player development also while trying to maintain like this win now focus. Like it is a very hard balancing act you have to do, because this is a very young Cleveland team that has the potential to level up and level up and level up and become one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. But how much time can you predicate and how much energy can you and resources can you allocate just on that player development aspect when you're also now staring down the barrel of, we just traded for Donovan Mitchell and like sent the farm out for Donovan Mitchell, and we have a all-star point guard that we just signed to the biggest contract in franchise history. Like it's time to win now. And it's fascinating to see how Cleveland goes about this, but I think the way Bickerstaff summed it up and saying like, listen, there's not a lot of pressure for Mobley to like be a high-end offensive player, and he's like, the expectations for him should be there because he does have that potential, but it's like going to be more the two-way impact, and maybe it's the stuff that you don't see by looking at the counting stats or the box scores every single night. Because again, Mobley didn't have a great game offensively. He did hit the game winner tonight, but like he was very, very impactful on the defensive side of the ball all throughout this game, and like still made his presence felt. And he did change the calculus, at least for how Phoenix maybe planned on attacking Cleveland, just because he was a bit of a question mark heading into this game in terms of his availability.
Yeah, just a point of comparison here. So for just kind of to give people an idea of like how different this is than some of the other cases out there for his development path. So Anthony Davis in year 2 with the Pelicans, this is he makes an all-star team this year. He's 20 years old. It's 2013-2014 season. He had a usage rate of 25.2. That was like a 4%. That was like about a 4% jump from year 1 to year 2, and like it pretty much just kind of grew from there. Never was like lower than 27, 28 from then on, even when he got to LA. Evan Mobley as a rookie had a usage rate of 20. He had a usage rate of like 20.6, I believe. I'm pulling this up, it's just being slow. And then this year it is down to 18.5. His usage rate has decreased because you get Donovan Mitchell. That's what happens, right? Like you don't like get Donovan Mitchell and have like your usage, like no one's usage rate is going to increase. Everyone's is going to decrease. Like that's just what happens when you get a guy as good as Donovan Mitchell, and you do that. And I'm sure Evan Mobley is really happy about that. I think just what it means is like you are going to see a guy who like whatever his development path looks like, it's just the arc is gonna be different, and like it's not gonna be a high volume thing. Like guys in his draft class, like it's not gonna be like Jalen Green where he's given the keys offensively and allowed to kind of do whatever he wants in a lot of ways. Like it's gonna look different than Scotty Barnes if Toronto maybe resets in some ways.
Or on a like more internal note, it's going to be different from like Kyrie Irving when he was first drafted first overall. And, like, given just the free reign to just take a bunch of shots and learn and grow from his mistakes. So
yeah. And that's
LeBron forcing him to grow up at that point in year
and like
5,
or like Kevin Love, who got to like Kevin Love, who in Minnesota got to like expand and grow into this role, and like it's just going to look differently because the Cavs have expectations. Just his numbers this year, like so he's played he's 36 games right now. He's like 1,225 minutes coming into Wednesday's game. Field goal percentage is up. 3 points, it's still 22%. It's not a 3-point shot. That hasn't happened. He's up to 60%, about just under 60% on twos. That's like a 5% increase over last season, 6% increase over last season. A little better at the free throw line on similar volume, a few more assists, same number of turnovers. He's averaging 15.4 points per 36 minutes. It was at 16 last year, so the scoring is just like a little bit down, and that makes sense on the lower usage. But he's been more efficient. And I think like the passing we've seen, and there's other stuff we've seen, but we'll see how this goes. I would like, if I'm the Cavs, I'm trying to find ways to use time to, like, as you get more integrated with all of this, to find more time for Mobley, and we'll see what that looks like. But it is just something to think about. Like his development path will be different. And if you're saying like, oh, he hasn't taken this All-Star, but he's not on an All-Star path right now. I don't know if he is. I think Mitchell's going to be an All-Star. I think Garland has a case. I think like it's Mobley. This might not be like the Mobley. Like coming to the year, I was like, this guy's probably gonna be an All-Star this year. I don't know if that's exactly happened, and that's fine. And in part, it's circumstances and how that develops over time is one of the most interesting things that will happen with the Cavs, not just this year, but next year, and as long as Evan Mobley is in Cleveland, until we find out exactly what he's going to be in his prime.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like his potential just makes him so fascinating for me because there's just so many little things that he's still showing flashes of, and he's only year 2 into his career. And I do think it's interesting that the Cavs kind of have him working a lot with Luke Walton, a guy who is kind of like a jack of all trades, where he was able to become a bit of a shooter, he's able to become a bit of a passer, he's a solid enough defender, a guy who could be like a bit of a fulcrum in an offensive system too, where it's just like some interesting perspective and learning stuff too. And I think just Mobley, again, like you said, it's the passing stuff we see a little bit more of. We see him bringing the ball up in offensive sets and things like that. We see him trying to shoot 3-pointers and add that to his arsenal a little bit over time. And maybe it's frustratingly, but also it's just a product of how Cleveland is working. Like if you want to watch this guy like make like a dramatic sophomore leap or even a dramatic rookie leap, you want him to have a little bit more of that selfish streak at times, just like take those shots and maybe just increase his diet out there. But it's also just not how Evan Mobley's wired as a player. I think he's much more satisfied making the winning play because, like I said, tonight, like in some of those situations when he is given an opportunity like he had at the end of the game against Phoenix tonight, that like he would try maybe look for the easier pass or the easier look and maybe kick it out to the guy in the perimeter because he think that's his teammate would probably be better off taking that shot instead of him, or it's more of an easier opportunity or a way to solidify a win against Phoenix because it's a 3-pointer instead of a 2-pointer. Because it's just interesting to see like how much maturity and poise he plays with on the court, and maybe he's a little bit too unselfish to a fault. But also I think it's also just a product of the system too, where the Cavs really do preach that mentality that it isn't me, it's we. And you see it with Garland, you see it with Mitchell, but those two are like the leading scorers for the Cavs. You see it with Allen as well. Like these guys individually could be absolute monsters for any team, but it's just a tricky situation where you have to balance player development and also, hey, we have 4 stars on this roster and a bunch of other guys who need shots too. And like you can only have so many go around in a 4-quarter NBA game.
Yep. That is going to be it for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow previewing the Cavs West Coast road trip. And we'll have some details on some fun stuff for coverage of that, which I'm excited about. But until next time, I'm Chris. That's Evan. Everyone, be well. Sorry again if this isn't. Jake's much better at this than me. We miss him. We can't wait till he's back. But until then, I'm Chris. That's Evan. Peace out. Stay hydrated.